Does the world need renewables and hydrogen to save the climate? That's what we're going to find out with the hydrogen story. Stay with us. Clean hydrogen is touted to be the game changer of the future. It gives a promise of delivering good, paying, clean energy jobs and realizing a net zero economy by 2050, and that's what we need for the Vision 2040 that we're living through right now. What is in it for Oman, and how will our spending power save the planet? This is the Hydrogen Story, where we talk about the biggest energy transition in history. Welcome to the Hydrogen Story. This episode is in support of the Green Hydrogen Summit that is happening at the OCCI on the 5th and 7th of December 2022. With me in the studios is Mr. Issam Al Sheibany, the VP of Sustainability at ASYAD. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start at the beginning. Climate change, hydrogen, renewables, big games. How is all this put together?
Well, I think the climate change required a replacement for the current fossil fuel, which contributes most of the CO2 around the world. CO2 and greenhouse gases have been causing a lot of damages in the world, and then a lot of studies through one IPCC report, which is produced by United Nations, suggested that we should move away from the fossil fuel, particularly which is because of its contribution to the CO2, and then find an alternative fuel. And the cleaner and the best fuel were available at that time, or currently the time, it is the hydrogen. Because hydrogen is widely available and it's no harm for the environment, and once it's evaporate, it's become to water again.
Water, that's the after product that they say.
Exactly.
Who stated that CO2 was damaging the climate?
Actually, there's a lot of studies where it show that the greenhouse protocol, which is started a long time ago, the Kyoto Protocol, where it says there is a number of gases affecting the temperature of the Earth. And then there are a list of them, but the carbon dioxide is contributing more harm than the rest of the Earth, of the gases. And we need to reduce the carbon dioxide because it's affecting the global warming. So it's making the world more warmer and then affecting the whole world. How exactly affecting? Actually, when you see there is two extremes. Either it causes droughts around the world, or it causes heavy rains where it go to extreme flooding. And then we have seen throughout the world both ends, and then we decided that then we need to stop doing something in it. To reduce the amount of CO2 available in the earth now is require a bigger journey, okay, or replacing the current source, which is the fossil fuel, and then going greener, which might take a longer time to go. And I think that's the journey where people says you cannot do net zero unless you have a proper plan and that the target for that around the world where it says 2050.
Net zero. Explain that.
Net zero, that you convert all your businesses, all your emissions, that you will have a zero emission. There is a different understanding between net zero or carbon neutrality. Carbon neutrality, where you balance between whatever your CO2 emissions, and then you can offset that with a project where actually you carbon capture. But net zero is that you go zero on carbon.
And what is Oman looking at to be able to be at 2050?
Actually, Oman, they just pledged for net zero at 2050 recently, with His Majesty blessing on that. And then now is making a detailed plan how we can achieve that target.
Okay, so Oman's contributing massively towards climate change, but reality states that our biggest revenues come from crude oil and gas, which is exactly the opposite of what climate change is. Are we going to be using these high revenues to be able to move towards a sustainable hydrogen input?
Correct.
And how can that be done?
And that's where the world terminology comes called energy transition. It's not like immediately fix where you just replace one fuel with another. However, that goes through an energy transition where you start with easy to abate targets like smaller factories or smaller businesses that can easily target, and then you move to the hard to abate businesses or burning, where that's becoming the last to be converted into a greener fuel. That journey, it might take you 20 years, and that's why I said the target 2050 is reasonable for them.
You mentioned carbon neutrality early on. Aren't Could people just grow millions of trees out there and that could work at getting rid of CO2 from the environment?
There is not enough. Actually, the world need two school of thought or two directions for net zero. One of them is electrolysis through hydrogen production. So you need a replacement where you use another source of fuel for burning, for heating up and everything. And that's where hydrogen come in the picture. And then a majority of that will have to be through carbon capture, where you still your operation be there, but you need to capture the oxygen, CO2, and then you can be in a safer zone.
Okay, I don't know what it is, but somehow I got lost. Could you elaborate further on that point that you just mentioned right now?
Okay, so the hydrogen production, that will give you a replacement for currently the natural gas you use for heaters, for example, or for gas production, or for power plant production. That can be it. But still, you need other businesses where you need a CO2 capturing and CO2 reduction. For example, if you say that other businesses will still can continue working on the current fossil fuel, they can still use it, provided that they have to capture the CO2 or minimize it. It will not go to atmosphere. They need to store it in cylinders, or they store it in there is a best storage in old mining systems, or in Oman, I think they convert into rocks with the companies in Oman.
So Oman is working towards carbon capture and holding the thing, but why are we capturing the carbon? Is it to be used, or is it to be stored away, to be gotten away from the environment completely?
Well, carbon is like a circle economy. It can come back a circle.
Yeah.
So you can use it in many other factors. For example, CO2 goes into the production of methanol through a combination of hydrogen. That's one source of it. CO2 can go back into other businesses like extracting of oil currently now. But CO2 goes in many other businesses that still need an amount of CO2. In reality, you cannot go zero on carbon, but however, you can capture it and convert it to, that's why you call it CCUS, where carbon capture, utilization, and storage come to picture.
Okay, so this green hydrogen economy will include decarbonization, carbon credits, carbon neutralization, and maybe using of carbon and all that stuff. How is Oman right now regarding carbon capture, thoughts-wise or action-wise, with the world being very sensitive on this CO2 emissions?
Well, we go back, Oman have to develop the baseline for its CO2 emissions. That's the first plan that we have to develop. And then later on, we need to think, now, if this is our baseline and we're targeting net zero, what are the tools or the methodology that we need to develop that we can go to different directions? So that's where the initial plan will develop. So there is many ways we can say CO2 can be used, converted, or stored.
Carbon dioxide and hydrogen seem to be from our chemistry labs to influencing our lives. Let's take a break and find out more about this. Stay with us.
We play, you listen.
You talk, we listen.
You got something to say? We want to hear it.
95.4 in Muscat.
And 91 in Salalah.
Music, news, views, and everything in between.
TFM.
TFM.
Let's talk.
Welcome to part 2 of this episode. This episode is in support of the Green Hydrogen Summit that will be held at the OCCCI, one more C in there, I'm sorry, on December the 5th to the 7th, 2022. With me is my guest, Mr. Issam Al Sheibany, the VP of Sustainability at ASYAD. Welcome.
Thank you, Fahmi.
Since I've mentioned ASYAD and you are within ASYAD, what is ASYAD's policy with green hydrogen and renewables and the climate change?
Well, actually, we are not the producer. However, we classified ourselves the transporter for the future. So we currently transport the Omani crude, LNG crude of Oman. Then we're hoping that in the future we'll be able also to transport the green molecules, so whatever forms have been produced of Oman to the world. We started an early experience where we're learning how to ship methanol. Currently we ship our Oman methanol as well. But in the future we're focusing also on how we can transport for the green molecule produced in Oman. That's in terms of transportation. We're also focusing more on decarbonization of our operations. Talking about our fleet of ships that still use fossil fuel, so we're exploring the best technology or best know-how available in the world where we can also move our fleets into a greener, cleaner fuel in the future. So that's still there. We're also focusing on decarbonizing our assets and businesses, so our port and services, our port operations, our many assets that we have within the group, including the dry dock, where we focus how we can reduce our carbon footprint in total.
How long ago have you started this process, this initiative, this movement?
Well, we started from the end of the last year. So we started that before even ahead of everyone else would talk about it. But
I was going to ask, which is the first companies to do it now? So we found out ASYAD.
So we starting calculating our carbon footprint 4 years ago, 2018, for our ships. So it's required by IMO that we do. So we have a huge data of our carbon footprint in shipping lines. Then we know how much we emitting, how much we carbon emitting there. So we have a baseline, and that moving because of the number of ships that we add, the number of ships that we sell off. That's their numbers there. However, we need now to focus on how we can not only increase our emission, but how we can bring it down and maybe targeting net zero with the IMO requirement.
How do you calculate this carbon that you're releasing?
It's mainly that...
and then accumulate them all together to say, this is what we're releasing.
Yeah.
It's not as straightforward
It's
in my
not so
head.
straightforward.
And you did this 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mainly it's calculated by the amount of fuel they use. Then you calculate it by a factor. There's a factor there where we use. So that's the one school or one method of calculation. The other method is calculation by having actual measurement on your ships, on the emission, and then that also calculate how much is it. The second method, which is putting a detector or gas readers, is still using in the oil and gas, where nearby that's a better do.
Okay.
However, we use both of them just to do a comparison which one is factually correct.
Does every country or company have a certain carbon emission level that they have to do, and if they exceed over that, they will get fined or penalized or anything like that?
There is no such a regulation. However, because we follow the Global Logistic Emission Council, where they gives you a direction of a ship like this, how much amount of CO2 emission, and if you go above one, they will not penalize you. However, you know that you are above the benchmark of the world. So it mainly give an indicative of a benchmark that you need to compare with. However, you need to say to see if the ships are performing well in terms of emission or not.
Okay. You've mentioned a lot of things that I can see an entrepreneur or a normal citizen get into. It's the calculations of the carbon. That, I think a whole department is needed over there, so therefore salaries and everything like that. The education, the awareness, whether it's to the community or to the corporations, and R&D. How is the R&D working here in Oman towards green hydrogen, decarbonization, carbon capture, net zero, all of these buzzwords that we're learning here right now?
Yeah. So I think there is many local university here have very good programs, and I give an example of few. But again, they have a partnership with international community where they do either 3 dimensions calculation of emissions.
Okay.
And then also there are universities where actually they are locally with a partnership with international university, where they also do the CO2 capturing in the ships, because we have seen them. And actually many of them actually where they put their researches, because it's still everything in papers now, and people learn from these papers and learn from it, and then try to replicate similar programs or similar initiatives with more additional thoughts on how we can do it in reality.
Is anything here in Oman that is cutting edge, leading, that we can be proud of, since Oman has I think 3 or 4 countries that is competing with around the world. So therefore, we should be able to be in the cutting edge of anything to do with green hydrogen.
I think that carbon capture and converting through rock is one of the cutting edge.
Wow.
Cutting edge.
Okay.
It's a kind of unique, and then converting to a rock.
So I know we have a company that actually does what you said right now.
Correct. It's 4401 is one of the companies actually.
Plug.
Yeah, where actually one of the it's our partners in terms of our carbon capture. We supporting them, and they have the technology converting CO2 into rocks. They have won international awards for that, and then funding.
He mentioned to me he's one of 2 companies in the world that does this.
Correct.
Very rare.
So,
and as ASYAD, you're supporting a growing company to be able to do that. What other companies would you like to support to grow as ASYAD here in Oman that you'd like to see?
I think it's also part of the same company where actually they produce biofuel, and the biofuel is like a lower production of comparing to normal fuel, fossil fuel. It's a less CO2 emission that also can support the carbon capture or carbon credit somehow. These are the 2.
Carbon credits, that's money right there, if I understand right. Please explain that.
So whatever amount of carbon that you reduce from your baseline, you get a credit out of that, you get a certificate, and that can be traded through locally or internationally where you get it. There is different methodology of calculating how much the cost of that carbon. If it is mangrove is lower value, where it is hard to abate, they become more value for that.
When do you think this carbon credit funding, money, revenue form will come into play with countries? And
actually, it has been there in the market for extended a longer time.
Okay.
However, it's not well regulated, and here in Oman require a body where it can certify how much there and then allow this accreditation and then selling it from one another. There is other companies, Oman, like OQ Trading, they in the trading of carbon credits.
So there's like a Wall Street trading that does specifically carbon?
Normally, yes, there is like a company like that. However, in Oman we don't have it, and then you have to go internationally. In Qatar, exactly, there is a model like that. They can do carbon credit. Or if you have platforms, there are other platforms. For example, you need to meet your carbon offsetting. Then you don't have a project, then you can buy your credit through one of the available through an offsetting platforms that help you to do that. So yes, there is. It's similar to a trading online where you can reuse your CO2s.
Okay, with business and trading, I want to come back to ASYAD. ASYAD, to my understanding, you have dry docks, you have shipping, you have ports, you have supply chain. I don't know what else I'm missing. I think all of that will require a transition towards hydrogen, correct? You've mentioned it earlier on. How much, though, of a headache, I don't know if that's the right word, how much of an obstacle and a challenge, and how soon will ASYAD be able to do that? And can we be a shining example or beacon to the world?
Well, if you're going back to the terminology, for scope 1 and scope 2, that's an easy task for ASYAD. I think we can do that because we know.
Scope 1, scope 2 is a business
Scope
term?
1 is a terminology that you use for understanding your emission production.
Okay.
So scope 1, your direct emission that's coming out from your operation. So the vehicles move, the ship that moves, these are direct emission. Phase. We call it scope 1.
Okay.
Scope 2 is that the energy and the power that you buy to run your operation, that classified as scope 2.
Yeah.
So scope 1 and scope 2 for ASYAD is very easy to go.
It's a clever way of looking at it.
Yeah. The challenge is going to scope 3, where is this your supplier, your supply chain, your customers, your suppliers also need to report their emissions that are affected for your businesses. And that where the difficulty, I think, this part of the world is still not yet mature enough.
Simplified apps.
Exactly.
Maybe.
That's so simplified apps, or the whole country adopt emission calculation, and that will be easier. So actually we're targeting some of the companies where they focus on scope 3, so we can be a key provider for them. So for example, we can do the green delivery, where actually the delivery for your last mile delivery can be classified as green. So you have a zero emission for that. You're becoming contract us because we are in the business of giving you cleaner or lesser emissions fuels.
So it's a very complicated, convoluted world of economy, but you need to figure out how you can get your things straight within this economy quickly. If we start this quick and we're ahead of the game, will we be able to lose? That's a question we can find out in the future. Can the hydrogen be pegged to the dollar like the petrol is pegged to the dollar, the petrodollar? Will there be a hydrodollar in the future?
I think that's very difficult to peg into it, particularly because of hydrogen mainly lies on how you produce it and how you transport it and how you store it. So it's very difficult to peg it into dollar because currently there is different methodology of production, a different utilization rate, different storage rate, and even different carrier rates. So there is a methanol, ammonia, liquid organic carrier, or hydrogen gas or hydrogen liquid. So that all affecting having one price of hydrogen. So there is no one.
I'm sure there'll be a Kissinger in the future who'll figure this out.
And I think a classic example, India actually, they're focusing on different way of transporting and even storing it, so it's becoming more difficult. So they want to go be innovative. So everyone is trying to be innovative into this new
When
demand.
the easiest solution comes in, then people will be able to find out what
Absolutely,
to do. What are countries doing right now to open their doors for innovators of hydrogen and companies of hydrogen right now?
I think classic example, the United States, when they announced the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, where actually for every 1 kilograms of hydrogen you produce, you will get a compensated or incentive for $3. That's even more attractive, very one. So we talk about $2 per kilograms of hydrogen.
Yeah,
now imagine you produce that and you get $3 in return.
Okay.
So $2 goes into it and $1 net profit that you put in your pocket. That's where it is. There is also a number incentive. They actually it's touching a huge number where they say $370 billion to incentivize the hydrogen movement business. That attracts all the businesses go to United States, or they will come with very innovative solutions that can meet the main goal, which is $1 in 1 decade for 1 kilograms. That's 1. And that's a very target
Americans
ambition.
are very good at showing these little symbols to get people attracted more at it, which is actually great because as we're realizing, hydrogen is money for the future. The question is, how can you take advantage of it? We're sitting down saying, I wish I was in the fossil fuel revolution. Now there's a hydrogen revolution coming our way. Well, with me was Mr. Issam Al Sheibany, who gave us an absolutely packed session full of answers and stuff to think about. So please rewind the episode and watch it again. He is the VP of Sustainability in ASYAD. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
This episode is in association of the Green Hydrogen Summit that is to be held at December 5th and 7th at the OCCI. So please stay tuned and head over there. My name is Fahmi Al-Ma'awali. Till the next episode.